Welcome back to the SAHMA Exchange, a podcast where policy, people, and property management meet. When most people hear the term property manager, they probably picture someone collecting rent, showing apartments, or handling maintenance requests. But anyone working in affordable housing knows the reality is much more complex. Today's property managers wear a lot of hats. They're navigating compliance regulations, responding to resident needs, managing budgets, overseeing maintenance, and often serving as the face of a community through both its challenges and its successes. Today's episode is titled Property Management 101. Joining us are two leaders who have spent years in the trenches and now help shape property management operations across multiple states. Josh Johnson is Chief Operating Officer at Winterwood Inc., and Layne Hurst is Senior Vice President at Gibson Property Services. Together, we're going to pull back the curtain on what property management really looks like, what separates great managers from average ones, how the role has evolved over the past few years, and why the people who do this work are some of the most important professionals in the industry. Whether you're brand new to our industry, a seasoned veteran, or someone who simply wants a better understanding of what property managers juggle every day, this conversation is for you. Josh, Layne, welcome to the SAHMA Exchange.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Glad to be here for sure.
Since this episode is Property Management 101, I wanted to begin with the basics. For someone who's never worked in the industry, the title property manager doesn't really capture everything the job entails. So I asked Layne, when someone says they're a property manager, what do most people think they do, and what are they actually responsible for?
This question is, I think, interesting because it's probably two different questions in one, insofar as what people think they do and what they're actually responsible for, mainly because I think most of our property managers are very dependent on when they started this journey, right? So if they started this journey pre-pandemic, I think that those people, and they're still in it today, those people view property management and a property manager role much differently than somebody in the post-pandemic environment that just came into this industry in the last 5 or so years. And so I think that what a person typically sees in this position is that they're responsible for a bunch of apartments, that they really don't understand the large scale business that they're really responsible for. And I think that kind of dovetails into finishing up that answer, is what they're actually responsible for is a piece of real estate, no different than, your home, my home, their home, and the business that operates on top of that real estate. So, everything that goes into owning your own business and operating your own business, that is what a property manager truly is responsible for. And I know at Gibson, that's something that we try to honestly instill into all of our managers, regardless of where they're at in their career journey, is that this is a business, and we want you as the property manager to operate your property as its own personal business to you.
What Layne just said is such an important distinction. It's not just managing a building, it's managing an entire business that's constantly evolving. And because so much of that work happens behind the scenes, I think people often miss how much property managers are juggling. So I wanted to ask Josh, in his experience, what does he think is the most misunderstood part of a property manager's job?
That it's probably just related to leasing units and collecting rent, right? That it's pretty simple. It's a sales job, and they're just there to make sure that they're leasing units, they're taking care of maintenance needs and collecting rent. I think people just oversimplify really what it means to be a property manager, for sure. And so it's eye-opening to a lot of people to understand the how big a world property management is, and how much leadership is required from our property management staff on a daily basis to run the business. I mean, I couldn't agree more with Layne. Everyone's running a small business, and It usually takes a property manager, 6 months, a year to really understand that. And so it's complex. It's not as easy as you would think it is, and it's a business and an industry that I love because there's so much to learn. You can never learn enough, and you're constantly learning more and more about real estate and what decisions you make on a daily basis and how that affects the long-term viability and the profitability of an asset, right? That's what the owners and investors are, and what we're here to do at the end of the day. But there's a lot of complexity that goes into that. And I think really leadership of the manager on staff and how they manage a community is viable for that. It's vital.
Josh mentioned leadership and the fact that it can take 6 months to a year before someone truly understands the scope of the property manager role. Part of that learning curve is figuring out just how many disciplines a property manager has to navigate every day. Affordable housing property management is often described as equal parts compliance, customer service, maintenance, and business operations. So I wanted to ask both Josh and Layne, which of those areas tends to surprise new professionals the most?
Business operations piece that really surprised people. And the foresight that you have to have in that leadership position to anticipate what you're going to need and connecting it, the decisions that you're making to the overall, viability, financial viability of the business that you're running. That's very surprising to people, and connecting those dots is critical in, our organization and our leadership's role. If we left training up to individual departments, right? And us in the affordable business, right? We manage a lot of affordable communities, and we get bombarded by compliance requirements and, getting files approved so that people can move in. And we could train all day and every day about program compliance, right? And I think we get stuck in that mode sometimes because we're trying to train managers on how to get units leased and the compliance aspects of the business. And there's a lot of red tape that we have to go through. And we can lose sight completely as to why we are in the business that we are in and what we're there to accomplish. And there's a lot of components to that. Customer service is obviously a huge piece of that. It can, can ensure stability of a property and impact the financials with less turnover and, all the different things that great customer service can bring. But really tying that back to the business aspects of why we've selected you as our property manager to run this business and how they can positively affect that. Is a real coaching opportunity. I think that people are just really are surprised that they get into business they don't really understand.
Yeah. Layne, would you agree with that as far as the most surprising part of the role?
I think it's a big piece of it. I think the other side of it is, especially on affordable communities, it's also true at conventional market rate communities, but how much of a parent, guardian, brother, sister, family member you end up becoming of many of these residents, because in many instances, these people, many people at our communities do not have a family. They do not have emergency contacts. I can't tell you how many times that I've personally sat down at a property and sat with an applicant or a resident. We're going through, the HUD required emergency contact form, and they're who do I put here, right? And that's a sad moment for sure, but I think after a while you get conditioned to that. It's still, heart-wrenching every single time it happens, but as a new professional into the industry, I think that is very eye-opening and very surprising to them. And preparing yourself for that that it is going to come, it's going to happen. You're going to be, like I just mentioned, all those different family members of that person. You're going to be that, and they're because they have nobody else. They have nobody else to go to and talk to and ask questions that they would normally ask, family members for. So while yes, all the things that Josh definitely talked about are always very surprising, I think the one piece that often gets overlooked is that what you actually represent to those folks that live in your communities that do not have anybody else.
I love that those two perspectives really go hand in hand. On one side, you're running a business. On the other, you're building relationships with people who often rely on you far more than anyone expects. That's a lot for someone just entering the industry. So I wanted to know if Josh and Layne were mentoring a brand new property manager on their very first day, what's the one thing they'd tell them to focus on before anything else? What would they want their property managers to get right first?
For me, it's always understanding your community. I oftentimes have gone through different phases of this question myself as a person that is responsible for training other people, right? And I always come back to, all right, if I'm sitting in this chair, what do I need to know more than anything else day one? What is going to overwhelm me day one that is going to prevent me from learning the basics of the company that I'm working for? And it's the challenges that are on site, right? So it's the physical challenges, it's the resident challenges, it's everything that is happening that is distracting you from getting the tasks done in your day to day. Because what I think here at Hayes Gibson, what we've learned, and this is newer for sure, but everybody is learning in a very remote environment. It's very hard to get people into a classroom and sit down and really churn through all the different programmatic technicalities that exist and the software bugaboos that you have to overcome. But the one thing that doesn't change is the property, right? And the people who live there. And if you can understand and appreciate and help those team members understand and appreciate those challenges and those distractions, what they're going to look like, it's going to help them along their training journey within the organization. And for me and for us here at Hayes Gibson, that's what we've started to do. We're more spreading out our training path so that they can spend the first few days or weeks just relearning their community and checking in with them, making sure that they have the training path and the training plan that they're sticking to, and we're checking in on that. But making sure that they understand what's happening on a day-to-day basis inside the four boundary lines of their property are critically important.
Understanding your community sounds like the foundation as a property manager. Once someone has that foundation, though, what determines whether they go on to become an exceptional property manager? So I asked Josh, what separates the property managers who thrive from those who struggle?
This is the challenge we have in the industry, right? Either I think that it's in your blood or it's not, right? Sometimes we like to say, as far as the characteristic of what's important from a property manager perspective, somebody who's eager to learn, I think, is a huge benefit to us. Anybody who can overcome obstacles and challenges and actually thrives in an environment that is challenging is certainly some very some key characteristics of an individual that will thrive in that position. And I think it really, what I have kind of looked back on and reflected on with that question is, it really comes back to taking personal pride in obviously the work that you do, right? And I think what I see that connected to the most is not only is it personal pride of what they do on a daily basis, but it's who they serve too, right? And having someone who is fighting for what is right for the the community members and the residents in their community is really, for me, at the center of all of that, because you can take any challenging environment that you have, whether it's, let's say it's a resident who's non-compliance on their lease and is causing problems in the community, right? Well, having compassion not only for, the family that's causing the problem, right? But also the community that you serve and the residents that you're putting yourself in their position, and realizing that you have to step up and take care of, challenging situations. You do have to hold some people accountable, but it's for the greater good of the community and the rest of the individuals and the families that you're serving. And those that really embody serving those residents and doing what's best for them, I think at the core, are the ones that really thrive. It's a job that that we have, and some people say, sometimes it's a thankless job, right? Because we're always uncovering more issues that we might have that we need to get fixed, and issues that we may need to get corrected, or we're always dealing with issues, right? And finding what those issues are and resolving those issues. But if you're connected in your heart and in your core to serving that community and those residents and doing best by them, that gives you the motivation to continue to go serve. And so it's really a service position in my mind. That's the mindset that I try to instill within, our residents, or our managers and maintenance techs, and anyone that's working in the field for us, is, if you have that mindset and you really feel like it's a service position to those that you are there to lead and serve, it makes your job a lot easier because you're passionate about it.
Josh wasn't just describing a skill set. He was talking about a mindset. The technical pieces of the job can be learned over time, but compassion and a genuine desire to serve are much harder to teach. I asked Layne if a property manager comes in with that service mindset, does he find it's usually possible to teach them the technical side, the business side, and the compliance side?
You can always come to work, right? And you can sit at your desk and do the menial tasks that are required of any job. It's not just this job, right? But showing up is really important, because when you're showing up, you're doing everything that Josh just talked about. Your people skills, your technical skills are going to be on point all the time. It's not something that you can just commit to. And I tell our managers that, like, look, if you wake up in the morning and you're not feeling it, you're 50%, just stay home. You know what? We give you PTO and time away from the office, paid, to take days that you need a mental health day. That's totally okay. Because if you come in 50% and somebody comes in 150%, we're in trouble, and you're going to have a bad experience. That resident or that applicant are going to have a bad experience, and everybody's going to suffer. And hopefully nobody gets in trouble from that exchange. But showing up is the most important part, and having that heart of service is critical in the affordable housing space. But I would say in the multifamily space, because again, you're dealing with people's life and not just doing a task.
Yeah, and I find that if a manager really embodies that, it makes those hard conversations with residents that much easier. Call it a soft skill, call it communication, better communication. Better communication for me comes from that heart of service and that empathy that you have of somebody that's in that position. I'm late on my rent. I can't pay my rent this month. Well, I have a job to do. There's the standards and expectations that I have as a property manager, and a process that I have to follow, but really putting yourself in that person's situation, they're looking for you for answers, right? They're looking for you for understanding of how they may have never been late on their payment before. They've never maybe gone through an eviction process before. And how do they, what does that look like? And what resources can you help point them in to help them out, right? There may not be any, they may not be able to have the help immediately that they need, but finding a place of compassion to be able to meet someone in the place that they are, to explain to them, take the time, for them to understand, what they need to do next, and potentially give them resources of who they could contact to be able to give themselves support. You're coming from a place of compassion and understanding for the individual that you're serving there in front of you. And it makes that conversation way more easy to deliver, and also easier from the resident's perspective that you really care and you're trying to help them out.
Listening to Josh and Layne, it's clear there's so much more to this role than most people ever see. Residents see one piece of it, ownership sees another, vendors see another. But property managers are trying to balance all of these priorities at the same time. So I ask this: what's one mistake they see ownership groups, vendors, or even residents make when they don't fully understand what property managers are juggling every day?
It's the dynamic of everything that is happening on a day-to-day basis. Many of our owners, many of our vendors, many people that interface with our industry don't really have the entry level or boots on the ground experience that I think is really required to understand what property managers are faced with on a day-to-day basis. For example, Hayes Gibson is a third-party fee management company, right? So we don't own any of our assets like Winterwood does. So we have a much bigger dynamic of the types of owners that we serve, right? And so we have owners that have representatives that have served in community manager roles, or maybe they started, as a 4-family owner, and they lived in one of the units and they managed and maintained the whole building. So they really, really understand how it operates and works. And then you have others that are more, institutional and are business folks and development folks and those types of individuals. And there is no perfect owner, right? Or no worst owner. But I think that the point I'm trying to make is that if you haven't had that experience to understand the amount of distractions, the amount of things that are pulling at their attention every single moment of the day, it's really hard to relate. Why can't you get this person moved into this unit today? Why does it have to be tomorrow or next week even? Why can't you get this person's money collected? What's the holdup? I don't understand. It should be very transactional. And I think that that's the piece that the folks that don't understand this entry level or property manager level, because there's 2 different levels there, but at the same time, it's that the boots on the ground stage where people don't have the appreciation for the amount of hard work and the amount of distractions that are coming on your plate every single moment of the day. And so for me, it's trying to coach those owners and those vendors and others, like, this is what we're doing and this is how we're doing it. And I think as long as you are doing a good job kind of walking them through the paces or having something that you can share with them that shows the progress, you are going to keep them satisfied as best as possible. Some will never be satisfied, right? They want to always push and always churn, and that's the nature of their business, and that is what it is. You're never going to stop that. But I think the one piece that we can do as leaders for our property management teams is to be that defense mechanism, that barrier to help them understand, what we are doing, so that it doesn't feel like we're just sitting down, taking a nap and collecting a free paycheck, and showing them the results of what we're doing every single day.
It really comes back to understanding. The more people appreciate what's happening behind the scenes, the better everyone can work together. That leads me to the resident perspective. If Josh and Layne could tell every resident one thing about the people who manage their communities, what would it be?
I think it's in the same vein of owners, investor expectations. Winterwood, we have owned, managed, and we also have fee managed business too. So very similar, and couldn't agree with more with what Layne was saying. I think the perspective of a resident is very similar to that as well. It's very compartmentalized. Everybody likes to kind of trivialize what we do on a daily basis. And what I tell my team is like, just because we make it look easy sometimes doesn't mean it is. And let's not forget about that. We're in it's blood, sweat, and tears to get to run the operations that we do to make it look so smooth. And, I think what residents don't understand is they may bump against a challenge or an issue that they're having and maybe frustrated with the experience of how long it takes to get resolved or maybe if they're being heard or listened to. And some people lose sight of all the great things that we do to serve our communities, and they focus on, the negative. I mean, I think that's just unfortunately the way society is these days. Let me throw a 1-star Yelp review on here and add some gasoline to the fire so that I can get some urgency about them, unclogging my sink, or whatever it is. And we understand people will go to those extremes in order to get attention, right? The squeaky wheel is going to get the grease sometimes. So, we wish, some would have a little bit more reasonable expectations about how long things can take, and for us to be able to respond, because there's a lot of things we are responding to, and there's a lot of things of service that we are providing at a very high level. And, there's a lot of those tasks to complete. And so what we could do, I think a better job with is communicating those expectations to the residents on the timeline that it's going to take to resolve the issue or follow up with the concern that they may have. Sometimes it's out of our hands with the legal system. We certainly have those challenges with residents, in conflict with our lease agreements, and the timeliness it takes to resolve some of those issues become very complicated. And it's not as easy as, well, you need to kick them out, right? They're a threat to the community or whatever it is. Well, it would be great if that was as simple as everyone would expect it to be, but we're not the police. We're not the legal system. There's due process for everybody. And I think people expect things to change immediately and responses and action to be taken immediately. And sometimes that is not always possible. And there is a due process or a process that we have to go through in order to resolve complaints or issues on property. And I think that's the challenge, and what people and residents don't always understand.
I would just add one thing. That residents need to understand that they're not the only resident that lives in the community.
Yeah. 100%. 100%.
Yeah. I'll just say yeah to both of you. I was thinking about just the culture where we expect things immediately. And when you were talking about, and like, if I can see this TikTok video in 30 seconds, I should be able to have my sink unclogged in 5 minutes after I call you about it.
Let's post it on Facebook and all that stuff. And what we can do is control the controllables, right? I mean, if there's something we can fix and quickly address it, we should be doing those things, right? And I think most residents are very reasonable about that, but sometimes the complexity of a challenging situation is not always something that we can control. Sometimes there is a due process, and it takes some time to work through those things. People don't always understand and recognize that. We wish we could resolve some things very quickly, but that's what I think residents don't always understand.
As Josh and Layne have been talking, I couldn't help but think about the staffing side of the equation. We hear so much across the industry about hiring challenges. Yet today, Josh and Layne have described a very specific type of person who succeeds in the property management role. So what's the secret? How do they find people who are passionate about serving residents and who can grow into great property managers? Let's hear what they have to say.
I think Layne's fully staffed right now, right? Yeah, I think you're fully staffed, right?
If I think Josh and I had that answer, we probably wouldn't be here right now. We'd be sitting on an island, sipping some great drinks.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I for us, for our organization, there is definitely no secret. It's really hard work, and I feel like it's always a different mechanism to try and recruit individuals. And as I was talking about earlier with the pre-pandemic and post-pandemic environment, it's really changed so much. Our new normal, because it is normal. You can't say, in the post-COVID era, it's new normal. It's now we're 6 years in, and it is what it is. But in this new normal space, you have to find people that not only have that heart of service, but that you are looking for that. And that part of it is really difficult. And then whenever you do find them, it's keeping them engaged and making sure that you don't terrify them with the programmatic challenges and the training platforms and programs that you're going to throw at them, because you have to. I mean, there's just no other way to do it. And trying to keep them through that process is very, very challenging. I mean, we're dealing with that challenge every single day. I would say our turnover rate is what it is, but the turnover rate is more because we're not finding those right people all the time right out of the gate. But when we do find them, they're leaving more quickly because they're like, yeah, I love this. It's what I like to do, but there's just too much to do. And I'm not being paid enough to go and do X, Y, or Z at the property level.
Mm-hmm.
And that part is hard to overcome. And I think the budget constraints that exist within our industry, specifically in the affordable housing space, make it extremely challenging to foster the right people. And there just aren't as many people that are interested in doing a job in most cases that you might be able to go and work at a FedEx or, what I would call something that doesn't require a lot of thought to go and do that job, where you have to have a ton of thought to do the same job for the same wage. Yes, you're in air conditioning most of the time, and it's a controlled environment and those types of things. But at the same time, it is a challenge to go and harvest new people and get them to stay committed, because it is that rigorous of a job, I think, especially at least until you're getting that, like Josh said earlier, that first year under your belt. And then once you're past that first year, it does start to get much easier because it just is a regular routine. But finding those folks today is harder than I think than ever, because we're all competing with the same group of people today than we were, 10 years ago. Realistically, we're in the same budget now as those FedExes, those UPSs, and Amazons, and everybody else that, we weren't in that same pool 10 years ago. We were a more intriguing opportunity from a financial perspective that we weren't. We are not now.
Layne painted a pretty clear picture of why recruiting has become so difficult. The expectations are higher, the responsibilities are greater, and we're competing with employers offering similar pay for far less demanding work. So I thought this was a good place to talk about how the profession has evolved. What skills do today's property managers need that weren't as important 10 or 20 years ago?
There's two sides of the coin, right? There's two pathways that we're trying to solve for, right? One is on the maintenance side of the business, right? So that's a whole different complex discussion in itself compared to a property manager position, right? each of those positions have their own challenges of recruiting the right individuals that have the skill and retaining those individuals that have the skill. The maintenance side, that skilled labor force is aging out from what we experience in our business. We're fortunate to have some really long-standing, highly skilled maintenance techs in at Winterwood, and I give my thanks every day for the fact that we've got some really long tenured staff in place. But that's not that part of our staff is aging out. They're retiring, and attracting new individuals into our organization that have that skill or have that passion to provide maintenance, on a property, and are interested in working with their hands and solving problems and working on maintaining a property for us is really difficult right now to find those individuals. Now, I will say we're always going to have, a portion of the next generation that's going to be interested in the technology and the office jobs and the glamorous, marketing and sales positions. We're always going to have a segment of any generation that is interested in working with their hands, being creative. And it's how do we find those individuals? And I think we've got to get more creative. There are a lot of people still in this world and in this country that would love to have a $20+ an hour paying job, working with their hands, providing service to a facility. Okay. And so we have to be creative in attracting and being able to employ those individuals, and who is interested in those positions. And so, I think technology is certainly something, not only from the, manager's position and software that we have, but it's also, we're a diverse country, and we need to be able to communicate with our staff in any various ways. And so, bridging that gap, I think that's been a challenge. There's a huge labor force that we have to connect with that may not, English might not be their primary language, but we, can employ, that we've got to be able to navigate communication. And so on the manager side, it's the same. It's a similar dynamic. And one of the things I think that we're all now faced with is the adoption of new technology. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's going to be great benefits to that for us, because our maintenance staff, our manager staff are bombarded with all kinds of tasks that they need to complete, and all kinds of demands from different departments and different finance agencies or regulatory agencies or owners, investors, whoever it may be, to do their job. And as much as we can automate and take off their plate some of the tasks that we require of them, especially in the affordable business, which, is we're heavy in, and I know Layne is as well. Trying to centralize some of those business activities and those tasks that I know are impacting my staff's ability to do what we've really hired them to do, and what we can't always replace with AI, right? Okay. Is that human connection, right? Mm-hmm. That's what we need them to be of service in our, mm-hmm. as leaders in our communities to do. Mm-hmm. And all of the other noise that we can try to help alleviate and eliminate for our on-site staff that distracts them from doing the main thing that they're there to do, which is, to service the community, make sure that we're, leasing units and highly occupied, collecting rent, and doing all the management business related activities. That's what we have to move to. there is always going to be a career track for a property manager and maintenance tech in organizations. I think we've done a very good job of being able to promote from within our organization, and people can see and have a vision for like, okay, I'm starting out at an entry level position, and there's certainly a career path for me here, and I can see what the stair steps and the stepping stones to get to those next levels may look like. But that's very important to convey in a vision for an individual who's starting in our industry. But to retain somebody, you gotta try to eliminate some of the tasks that we have, and I think technology will certainly help us in that.
Yeah.
In being able to recruit and retain.
I really appreciated something that Josh mentioned here: creativity. Not just creativity in recruiting, but also in embracing new technology and finding ways to automate tasks so property managers can spend more time doing what only people can do, serving residents. Which brings me to my last question. After everything we've talked about today, the challenges, the responsibilities, and the changes in the industry, what keeps Josh and Layne so passionate about leading property managers in this industry?
So for me, the affordable housing space is something that I am personally connected to. Growing up, I didn't know that I was in affordable housing or surrounded by affordable housing, but fast forward to my early 20s when I started doing this, I immediately was just shocked by my awareness with our demographic and how much I connected with our demographic. And so I immediately was intrigued and wanted to learn more. Also felt bad. And I don't know why. I have like this survivor's guilt maybe. But at the same time, I want to help as many people as I possibly can, because I know what my friends and myself endured when we were kids. And I think it also galvanized us and made us who we are. But at the same time, it's personal for me. And so I am dedicated to this life because it's something that I want to help others that were like me growing up. And maybe I can put them on the right path, or I can do something, or our company can make a difference in their experience to allow them to be successful. And that is something that drives me every single day. It gets me out of bed every single morning. And now as my career has grown, certainly I have much more exposure to more than just the affordable housing space. But my start was in affordable housing, and over the course of the 20 years that I've been doing this, it has evolved into serving way more than just the affordable housing industry. But affordable housing is where my heart is at, and it's what I love, mainly because it's who I am, and I want to help more people like me be successful.
Well, that's great. Josh, I'll ask you the same question. What keeps you going every day?
I've just, being in this business, it's incredibly rewarding, right? It's the home is where everything starts. That's the stability, and the foundation of life and growing up and having a family and, living the human experience, is having a safe community to live in and a clean and, fantastic, home experience. And we get to provide that every day for people. And so there's a lot of things that can take you away from and to get you to lose sight of what we provide to people on a daily basis, whether conventional affordable housing. We're providing housing and a housing experience for people. And it's a community. It's a community that surrounds everyone that we get to have and are blessed with being residents in our communities. that's their neighborhood, that's their community, right? And we get to try to shape and create a good experience for people. And if we really keep that at heart, it's incredibly rewarding. When you see a thriving community, of families that feel safe, going outside and playing, on the playground, and going to work every day, and having Thanksgiving and coming to our community rooms or going to our pools and just enjoying life. I mean, that's very rewarding for me on a daily basis. You can let all the other challenges and things creep in that make it frustrating, and we all get to deal with, get the pleasure to dealing with that in our industry, right? But those challenges that we meet head on a daily basis, that we resolve, make that experience much better for the communities and families that we serve, and that's very rewarding to me.
I want to thank Josh and Layne for joining us today. I think one of my biggest takeaways from this conversation is that great property management is all about balance. Throughout this discussion, they both emphasized the importance of running a strong operation, understanding the business, embracing technology, and developing great leaders. But neither one of them ever lost sight of the people. At the end of the day, affordable housing is about serving residents and strengthening communities, and I think that balance came through in everything they both shared. Thanks again to both of them for their leadership and for the work they're doing to move this industry forward. And thanks to everyone for listening. We hope today's conversation gave you a greater appreciation for the people who keep affordable housing communities running every day. And if you're one of those people, we hope this conversation encouraged you. If you enjoyed this episode of the SAHMA Exchange, be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with a colleague. We'll see you next time.